Let us start by opening HIPAINT app. Now add a new canvas on 300 times 300 pixels, but you may use higher like 500 if you prefer. The PPI value doesn't matter, but I just simply set to at least 150 value. Now choose any brush from the default and start making your own brush shape to use later on. Just imagine this as a stamp image or your brush tip. I will choose one from the basics, though I might have made some changes and forgot to reset this to its default settings. I'll just make some quick random sketch on how I want to make the brush tip of my brush, so feel free to create your own pattern. Once you are okay, simply share this as JPEG or PNG file, but I just use the JPEG for demo. Once you exported the image, time to create a new brush. First, let's modify the canvas size and make it bigger at least from 2000 pixels or higher. I simply use a 3000 pixels canvas for this demo. Depending on your project, you can set the size depending on your needs. You will notice your earlier sketch will become smaller as you have increased the canvas size. You may clear first the layer, then start creating a new group brush, so you can organize your personal-made brushes in one group to separate from the default brushes. Look for the folder image with plus symbol to create a new group folder. Hit the plus icon to create a new brush inside your group folder. You can rename this later when you are done. Open the brush settings and go to Shape, and let's replace it with our own brush shape that we created earlier. Again, tap the plus icon, and depending on your device, you should be able to find it inside your album or gallery. So make sure to memorize the shape you had drawn earlier and import it. Tap the check mark, top right corner to import. Simply scroll down and look for the image you imported and tap to select it, usually just near the default brush shapes if it's your first time adding new ones. If you see a blank white space, simply tap the alpha to show the image. You can first give it a try after replacing the default brush shape to see the difference. Just like that, you created your new brush with your own custom brush shape. Time to mess with the brush settings. Open the brush and start increasing the scatter value, which will eventually, as the term itself, will scatter the brush shapes randomly, which you can notice from the window preview. I barely touch the other settings, but pay attention more on the blending mode and rotation. I only modify the count to make the brush more darker if needed. You can max the size of the brush to 500 pixels depending on its usage, but you can adjust it later using the brush size slider to your left. Spacing is also important to help you decide the outcome of the brush. Make some trial and error adjusting its value. Keep testing the brush as you modify the settings until you are satisfied of the outcome. Under the pen, you can set the value to 0 to remove the taper on both ends of your brush stroke. Again, this depends on the usage of your brush. Let me turn it back to 100% and use my pen to see the difference. Here's the taper of the brush stroke on both ends that I mentioned. You can add some texture as well to give some texture to your brush if needed. There are default textures you may use, or import your own texture images that you want to use. Let me zoom a little bit so you may see the texture applied to the brush. By default, when adding a texture, it's like painting over a fixed texture and revealing it with your brush stroke. Even if you keep on painting on top of each stroke, we'll have a fixed placement of the texture. So to make it random, I usually turn on the set texture to each tip. This way, each stroke will somehow overlap each texture, unlike giving a fixed pattern texture. I normally use the fix and random rotation and seldom use the other selections, as these to rotation have its own purpose in relation to the brush you make, though you may still try and test it out yourself. Try to change from one to the other, and you can surely see the difference between the two. Turning off the scatter will also give you a different effect, so choose wisely when to up scatter as you play with the spacing value. Moreover, creating a new brush will require some trial and error until you reach the desired output. Again, there's no right or wrong here. As long as you are happy of the outcome of the brush, then just keep making those brushes and tweak its settings. If you want some sort of color mix on your brush, then there is the dynamic section where you can set a value for the hue. So you may want to check it as well and play with the values. Not sure if you could see those yellow and purple mix, so let us exaggerate and increase the hue value so you may get the idea. Perhaps you can add this when making some watercolor brushes. My apologies that the color mixing is so weird on my device. Please try to test it on your own if it would look better. I did test on my Android phone and just works fine, not like this showing some straight linings. You may also want to explore the pen control and try to play with the pressure curve just like from other drawing apps that I have tried. This would be useful to apply to your brushes. I don't usually add the speed pressure to my brush, but you may activate these if you're using your fingers to draw instead of using a stylus pen. If you have some shaky or unstable hands, you may add some smoothness. This is same like the stabilizer setting. This is better than activating the stabilizer, so you can assign each brush that requires smoothness and not apply to all brushes you want to use. Here's an interesting part of the blend mode setting, which you can turn your brush into eraser. Just go to the blend mode and set to erase. You may try to select other blend mode depending on your needs. I usually pick from normal, multiply, divide, and difference that suits my brush. So that's it. By starting from the brush shape, adjusting the spacing, rotation, adding some texture, and changing the blend mode, you will definitely come up with a new brush of your own. Thanks again for watching. I do hope you get the idea on how to make your own brush, and feel free to ask any questions in the comments section. Thank you.